Jake Morrison checked his fighter's controls one more time. The small ship hummed quietly around him as he flew his patrol route near Harmony Point Station. He was 28 years old and had been doing this job for 2 years now. His mother, always worried when he flew these missions, but Jake loved being out here among the stars. The diplomatic station looked small against the blackness of space. Jake could see the lights of the docking bays where ships from Earth and the Cathari Empire came and went every day. His mother, Helen Morrison, worked on that station. She was Earth's chief ambassador to the Cathari, trying to keep peace between humans and the alien race. Jake pressed the comm button on his control stick. "Control, this is Patrol 7. Everything looks quiet out here." "Copy that, Patrol 7, came the reply from the station. "Complete your sweep and return to base." Jake smiled and banked his fighter toward the outer markers. He had done this. Same patrol dozens of times. The Cathari were strange creatures that looked like giant insects, but they had been peaceful for 3 years now. His mother had worked hard to build trust with them. The Cathari Empire controlled many star systems. They were proud warriors who valued strength and honor above everything else. At first, they had looked down on humans as weak and soft. But Ambassador Morrison had slowly convinced them that Earth wanted only trade and friendship. Jake was proud of his mother's work. She had spent long hours in meetings with the Cathari leaders, learning their customs and language. She often came home tired but hopeful. "Peace is hard work," she would tell Jake, "but it's worth it." As Jake completed his patrol route, he thought about his plans for the evening. He wanted to have dinner with his mother and hear about her latest negotiations. The Cathari were discussing a new trade agreement that could bring valuable resources to Earth's colonies. Suddenly, his radar screen lit up with new contacts. Jake frowned and adjusted the display. 3 large ships had appeared out of nowhere, their sleek shapes familiar, but wrong. Cathari warships. But they weren't supposed to be here. "Control, this is Patrol 7, Jake said into his comm, his voice tense. "I have 3 Cathari military vessels approaching the station. They weren't on the schedule." "Patrol 7, stand by," came the reply. Jake could hear the worry in the controller's voice. The Cathari ships moved toward Harmony Point with purpose. These weren't the usual diplomatic vessels. These were warships bristling with weapons and armor. Jake had studied their designs during his training, but he had never seen them this close. His comm crackled with a transmission on the emergency channel. It was his mother's voice, speaking quickly. "All ships, this is Ambassador Morrison. We have a situation here. The Cathari are claiming we broke our trade agreement. They say we stole from them." Jake felt his heart skip. Stole from them? That was impossible. Earth had been careful to honor every part of their agreements with the Cathari. "Mom, what's happening?" Jake transmitted on a private channel. "Jake, stay away from the station," his mother replied. "Something's gone wrong. The Cathari commander is very angry. He says we insulted their honor." Jake watched as the 3 warships took position around Harmony Point. Their weapons were powering up, the energy readings clear on his scanner. This was not a diplomatic visit. "Control, those ships are targeting the station," Jake reported. "I'm reading weapon locks." "All fighters, return to base immediately," Control ordered. "Emergency protocols are now active." But Jake didn't turn back. He couldn't leave his mother and the other people on the station. If the Cathari were planning something, maybe he could help. His small fighter had weapons too, though nothing compared to those massive warships. The lead Cathari vessel opened, a channel to the station. The alien commander's voice was harsh and clicking, speaking through a translator. "Humans of Harmony Point, you have dishonored the Cathari Empire. You have stolen from us and lied to us. This insult cannot stand." Jake's mother replied, her voice calm despite the danger. "Commander Zethak, there has been a mistake. Earth has honored all agreements. We can discuss this peacefully." "Peace?" The Cathari commander made a sound that might have been laughter. "You speak of peace while you betray us. We came here believing humans could be trusted. You have shown us we were fools." Jake moved his fighter closer to the station, staying in the shadows of a nearby asteroid. He could see people moving frantically behind the station's windows. Emergency lights were flashing on all decks. "The time for talk is over," Commander Zethak announced. Let this be a lesson to all humans. The Cathari Empire will not be mocked. The first blast hit Harmony Point's outer ring. The explosion lit up space like a small sun. Jake watched in horror as pieces of the station spun. Away into the darkness, people were dying in there. His mother was in there. "No!" Jake shouted into his comm. He pushed his fighter's engines to full power and dove toward the attacking ships. His weapons were small, but maybe he could distract them long enough for people to escape. Jake's fighter shook as enemy fire filled the space around him. The Cathari had been waiting for this, he realized. They had planned this attack. The accusation of theft was just an excuse. He managed to hit one of the warships with his missiles, but the damage was minor. The ship's shields absorbed most of the impact. More weapons fire reached out for him, and Jake felt his fighter's hull crack under the punishment. His engines died first. Then his life support started failing. Jake tried to reach his mother on the comm, but static filled the channel. Through his cracked canopy, he could see Harmony Point burning. Pieces of the station drifted past his fighter like metallic snow. "Control, this is Jake Morrison," he transmitted on the emergency channel. His fighter was dying around him and enemy ships were closing in. "Tell Earth what happened here. Tell them the Cathari were waiting for this. They wanted a reason to attack us." The last thing Jake saw before the aliens captured him was his mother's section of the station, still intact but surrounded by fire. He hoped she was alive. He hoped someone would survive to tell Earth what had really happened at Harmony Point. The Cathari pulled his broken fighter into their ship's hold. Jake whispered into his dead comm system. "Tell Earth they were waiting for this." 3 days passed without any word from the Cathari Empire. The attack on Harmony Point had left 47 people dead and the diplomatic station in ruins. Ambassador Helen Morrison had survived, barely escaping in a rescue pod before her section collapsed. She now sat in a medical bay on Luna Station staring at the bandages on her hands. The doctors said she would heal, but Helen felt broken inside. Her son Jake was missing. The rescue teams had found pieces of his fighter but no body. Some people said he might have escaped. Others whispered that he was probably dead. Helen knew better. The Cathari had taken him. Admiral Kate Sullivan walked into the medical bay carrying a data pad. She was a tall woman with gray hair and cold blue eyes. Kate had been fighting in space for 30 years, and she had never liked the idea of trusting aliens. "Helen, I'm sorry to bother you," Kate said, sitting down beside the bed. "But we need to talk. Something has arrived." Helen looked up from her bandages. "What do you mean?" "A Cathari ship just docked at Luna Station, a small courier vessel. They're asking to speak with Earth's government." Kate's voice was carefully controlled. "They have something for us." Helen felt her heart race. Maybe Jake was alive. Maybe the Cathari were ready to talk peace again. "What is it? Did they say anything about prisoners?" Kate's face was grim. "They won't say anything except that they have a message from High Commander Zethak. They want to meet in the main docking bay in 1 hour. Helen tried to stand up, but the doctors pushed her back down. "I'm going to that meeting," she said. "Helen, you're in no condition to—" "That's my son out there," Helen interrupted. "If there's any chance he's alive, I need to be there." Kate nodded slowly. She helped Helen into a wheelchair and pushed her through the corridors of Luna Station. The space station was huge, home to millions of people and the center of Earth's space operations. Today it felt empty and cold. They arrived at the docking bay to find a crowd already gathering. President Marcus Webb was there with his security team. General Lisa Crawford had flown up from Earth with a group of military advisors. News reporters were being held back by security guards. The Cathari courier ship was small and black, shaped like a beetle. It had no weapons that anyone could see, but it looked mean anyway. A single airlock connected it to the station. "Here they come," someone whispered. The airlock opened with a hiss of escaping air. 2 Cathari stepped out. They were tall and thin, covered in hard black shells that looked like insect armor. Their faces were hidden behind smooth masks, but their large eyes glowed yellow in the station's lights. The lead Cathari carried a small metal box. The other one held a data pad with symbols that nobody could read. They walked to the center of the docking bay and stopped. We bring greetings from High Commander Zethak of the Cathari Empire, the first alien said through a translator device. Its voice sounded like metal scraping against stone. We have a message for the leaders of Earth. President Webb stepped forward. We're listening. The Cathari placed the metal box on the floor between them. This contains the body of the human called Jake Morrison. He died without honor, as all humans die. We have marked him according to our customs. Helen felt the world spin around her. The wheelchair seemed to tilt, and she gripped the armrests until her knuckles turned white. Jake was dead. Her son was dead. Admiral Sullivan moved closer to the box, her hand resting on her sidearm. What do you mean, marked him? The human fought like a coward, the second Cathari replied. He attacked our ships and then surrendered when faced with real battle. We have given him the marks of shame that such weakness deserves. The first. Alien activated its datapad. Images appeared in the air above the device, showing symbols carved into flesh. Helen recognized some of them from her diplomatic studies. They were Cathari marks of dishonor, used to brand criminals and cowards. We have removed his military symbols and replaced them with marks of shame. The alien continued. Let all humans see what happens to those who attack the Cathari Empire. General Crawford stepped forward, her face red with anger. You tortured a prisoner of war? We gave justice to a coward, the Cathari replied. Your son attacked our ships without warning. He died as he lived without courage. Helen felt something cold and hard growing in her chest. The aliens didn't understand. Jake hadn't attacked them to be a hero. He had attacked them to protect people. To protect her. President Webb's voice was deadly quiet. Are you telling us that you killed Lieutenant Commander Morrison and then mutilated his body? We gave him the death his cowardice earned, the first Cathari said. The marks we carved into his flesh declare him unworthy of warriors' honors. In our culture, such marks follow a being into the afterlife. The docking bay fell silent. Helen could hear her own heartbeat in her ears. Around her she could see the faces of Earth's leaders. They looked shocked, disgusted, and very angry. Admiral Sullivan knelt beside the metal box and opened it carefully. Inside was a sealed container marked with warning symbols. She opened that too, and her face went white. Dear God, she whispered. Helen couldn't see what was in the container, but she could see Kate's reaction. The Admiral's hands were shaking as she closed the box again. The first Cathari held up its datapad again. High Commander Zethak sends this message to your government. The Cathari Empire will not tolerate insults to our honor. The attack on our ships was an act of war, but we are merciful. We will accept Earth's surrender and formal apology. If you refuse, we will destroy your colonies one by one. President Webb looked at the metal box, then at Helen, then back at the aliens. You want our surrender? Your species is weak, the second Cathari said. You hide behind diplomacy because you cannot fight. The death of this human proves our point. Accept your place as subjects of the Empire, or face destruction. Helen felt the cold thing in her chest grow larger. She looked at the alien creatures who had killed her son and desecrated his body. They thought humans were weak. They thought killing Jake would scare Earth into giving up. She pushed herself up from the wheelchair, ignoring the pain in her injured hands. Every person in the docking bay turned to look at her. You made a mistake, Helen said, her voice carrying across the silent bay. You think my son died like a coward? He died protecting people. He died trying to save lives. The first Cathari tilted its head. Your words do not change the marks on his body. He is branded as unworthy forever. Helen walked slowly toward the aliens, her legs shaky, but her voice strong. No, you branded him as a hero. Every mark you carved into his skin tells Earth that you are monsters. Every symbol you put on him is a declaration of war. She turned to face President Webb and the other leaders. My son believed in peace. He died trying to protect it. You've returned him to us as proof that peace with your kind is impossible. The president nodded slowly. Ambassador Morrison, what are you recommending? Helen looked one more time at the metal box containing her son's body. Then she looked at the aliens who thought they had sent Earth a message about weakness. "I recommend we send them a message back," she said. "My son died serving humanity's hope for peace. They have returned him to us as a declaration of war. I say we give them the war they want." The docking bay erupted in shouts and angry voices. The Cathari seemed surprised by the reaction. They had expected fear, not fury. President Webb raised his hand for silence. When the bay was quiet again, he spoke to the aliens. "You can return to your commander with our reply. Earth does not surrender, Earth does not apologize, and Earth does not forget." The two Cathari looked at each other, then back at the humans. "You choose war with the Cathari Empire?" "No," Admiral Sullivan said, standing up from beside the metal box. "You chose war when you tortured and killed our people. We're just accepting your choice." As the aliens walked back to their ship, Helen sat down heavily in her wheelchair. The cold thing in her chest had grown until it filled her entire body. Her son was dead, mutilated by creatures who thought humans were weak. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The United Earth Council met in emergency session 6 hours after the Cathari left Luna Station. Representatives from every human colony and space station filled the great chamber. The debate lasted only 30 minutes. The vote was unanimous. President Webb stood at the podium, his face grim as he spoke to the galaxy. "The Cathari Empire has committed an act of war against humanity. They have murdered our diplomats, destroyed our stations, and desecrated our dead. Earth's response begins now." Admiral Kate Sullivan was already moving before the president finished speaking. She had spent the last 3 hours in the war room, planning humanity's response. Earth had been preparing for this possibility for years, even while hoping it would never come. "All fleet commanders, this is Admiral Sullivan," she broadcast to every human ship in space. "Operation Righteous Fury is now active. You have your orders. Make them count." The first wave of attacks began 12 hours later. Captain Rick Taylor commanded the assault carrier ESS Vengeance as it dropped out of Aoi, hyperspace near the Cathari border world of Nexus Prime. The planet was home to 3 million aliens and a major military base. "All fighters launch immediately," Rick ordered. "Target their orbital defenses first, then move to ground installations." The Cathari had built their defenses assuming any human attack would be small and weak. They were wrong. 60 human fighters poured out of the Vengeance's hangar bays, followed by bombers and assault ships. Commander Amy Foster led the fighter squadrons, her voice calm over the comm channels. "Gold Squadron, take the satellite array. Blue Squadron, hit their communications center. Red Squadron, you're with me on the main defense platform." The Cathari defenders scrambled to respond, but they were not ready for the speed and fury of the human attack. Their ships were powerful but slow to move. Human fighters danced around them like angry wasps, striking from unexpected angles. Amy's Red Squadron reached the main defense platform first. The massive structure bristled with weapons, but it had been built to fight large warships, not small fast fighters. Amy led her pilots through the platform's blind spots, targeting weak points that Earth's intelligence had identified years ago. "This is for Jake Morrison," Amy whispered as she fired her missiles into the platform's power core. The explosion lit up the darkness of space, taking out half the planet's orbital defenses in one strike. On the ground, General Lisa Crawford's Marines were landing in force. She had trained these soldiers for years, preparing them for the possibility of fighting alien enemies. Now that training was paying off. "Remember your briefings," Lisa told her troops over the comm. "The Cathari are strong, but they fight in predictable patterns. Use your speed and adaptability. Hit them where they don't expect it." The Marines moved through the alien cities like ghosts. They had studied Cathari tactics and architecture, learning how to turn the aliens' own strengths against them. Where the Cathari expected direct assault, humans struck from the shadows. Where the aliens gathered for defense, human artillery found them. Dr. Nathan Cross had spent 3 years studying Cathari biology as part of the diplomatic mission. Now his research had a different purpose. From his laboratory on Earth, he provided tactical information to the military commanders. Their armor is strongest on the front and back, Nathan explained over a secure channel. Side attacks are much more effective. Also, they have trouble seeing in certain light frequencies. Use your strobing lights to confuse them. The information proved deadly accurate. Human soldiers used specially designed weapons that exploited weaknesses in Cathari biology. What should have been a difficult battle became a systematic dismantling of alien defenses. Within 18 hours, Nexus Prime had fallen. The Cathari garrison surrendered after losing 80% of their forces. Human casualties were light, 12 dead, 34 wounded. The aliens had expected to face frightened diplomats. Instead, they met professional soldiers who had been preparing for this war. The second wave hit 3 more Cathari systems simultaneously. Commander Tony Blake led a stealth attack on the industrial world of Keth Secundus, while Captain Rachel Stone assaulted the military academy on Warrior's Rest. Each attack followed the same pattern, swift, brutal, and completely unexpected. The Cathari High Command finally understood what was happening. High Commander Zethek called an emergency meeting on the capital world of Keth Prime. "How is this possible?" demanded war leader Vashatai. The humans were weak. Their ambassador spoke only of peace and trade. Zethek studied the reports from the fallen worlds. Human forces had struck with precision and overwhelming force. Their technology was more advanced than anyone had realized. Their soldiers fought with a cold efficiency that terrified even Cathari warriors. "We were deceived," Zethek admitted. "The humans hid their true strength behind diplomatic smiles. They made us believe they were prey, when they are predators." The attacks continued for 2 weeks. Human forces liberated system after system, pushing deep into Cathari space. Every world that fell revealed more about humanity's hidden military capabilities. Earth had dozens of advanced warships that no alien intelligence service had detected. Human colonies were defended by weapons platforms that could destroy entire fleets. Admiral Sullivan coordinated the campaign from her flagship, the ESS Thunder. She had been fighting in space for 30 years, but she had never seen anything like this. Human forces were performing beyond all expectations, driven by fury over Jake Morrison's death. "They made one crucial mistake," Kate told her staff officers. "They thought our desire for peace meant we couldn't fight. They confused diplomacy with weakness." Captain Rick Taylor's battle group reached the edge of Cathari core space on the 14th day of the war. His ships had fought through 6 systems, destroying everything the aliens put in their path. The Vengeance bore scars from a dozen battles, but her crew remained eager for more. "Admiral, we're receiving surrender offers from 3 more systems," Rick reported. "They want to negotiate terms." "No negotiations," Kate replied immediately. They had their chance for peace. They chose war instead. The human advance continued without mercy. Colony worlds that had been under Cathari control for decades were liberated in hours. Alien military bases that had stood for centuries were reduced to rubble. The proud Cathari Empire was collapsing faster than anyone had thought possible. On Earth, the people watched the war with grim satisfaction. Every victory was dedicated to Jake Morrison and the other victims of Harmony Point, the young pilots. Death had become a rallying cry for humanity's forces. Helen Morrison stood in the cemetery where her son would be buried, watching the news reports of human victories. Admiral Sullivan had asked her to become Earth's first military governor of occupied Cathari space. The job would mean overseeing the trials of war criminals and rebuilding the conquered worlds. "Yes," Helen had told the Admiral, "I accept." As she walked among the graves of other soldiers who had died for Earth, Helen felt the cold fury that had sustained her since Jake's death. The Cathari had wanted to send humanity a message about weakness. Instead, they had awakened something terrible. The war was far from over, but its outcome was no longer in doubt. Earth had revealed its true strength and the galaxy was taking notice. Other alien civilizations were sending urgent messages to their embassies, asking about humanity's military capabilities. The species that had seemed so eager for peaceful coexistence had shown its other face, and that face was terrifying. High Commander Zethek stood in his fortress on Keth Prime, watching the reports of defeat pour in from across his empire. 12 systems had fallen to human forces in just 3 weeks. His proud military was retreating on every front, and panic was spreading through the civilian population. "How many ships do we have left?" Zethak asked his aide, a young Cathari named Teshava. 43 warships still operational, Commander. Most are damaged and low on supplies." Teshava's voice shook as he delivered the numbers. "The humans are advancing on 3 more systems. Our forces there are requesting permission to retreat." Zethak turned away from the tactical display. 3 weeks ago, he had commanded over 200 warships and thought himself master of this sector of space. The human ambassador had seemed so weak, so eager to please. He had been certain that killing her son would break their spirit. Instead, it had unleashed something monstrous. "Sir, there's more," Teshava continued nervously. "Intelligence reports that the humans are looking for you specifically. They have teams asking captured soldiers about your location." Zethak felt a chill run through his armored body. The humans weren't just winning the war, they were hunting him personally. This wasn't how civilized species conducted warfare. This was the behavior of savage beasts. On the human battleship ESS Thunder, Commander Tony Blake studied intelligence reports about Keth Prime. He was Earth's best spy, a man who could find anyone anywhere in the galaxy. Admiral Sullivan had given him one job: locate High Commander Zethak. The fortress city of Keth Dorai is built into the planet's largest mountain, Tony explained to his team. Underground tunnels connect hundreds of chambers. Zethak will be in the deepest levels, probably in the command center. Lieutenant Sam Davis looked at the fortress plans on his datapad. "How do we get past all those defenses? The place has shields, energy barriers, and thousands of soldiers." Tony smiled coldly. "We don't go through the defenses. We go under them." He pointed to a section of the mountain that showed old mining tunnels. "These were abandoned 50 years ago, but they connect to the main fortress. The Cathari probably forgot they exist." Meanwhile, Colonel Steve Parker was preparing for the ground assault on Keth Prime. His Marines had fought through 6 worlds to reach this point, and they were ready for the final battle. The alien homeworld was supposed to be impregnable, protected by defenses that had never been breached. "Listen up," Steve told his troops as they prepared to land. "This is their capital world. They'll fight harder here than anywhere else. But remember why we're here. Remember Jake Morrison. Remember what they did to him." The Marines nodded grimly. Jake's death had become legendary among Earth's forces. Every soldier knew the story of the young pilot who died protecting others, only to have his body desecrated by alien monsters. The first human forces landed on Keth Prime during the planet's night cycle. The aliens had expected a massive frontal assault on their main defenses. Instead, small teams of Marines appeared all over the planet, striking at communication centers, power plants, and supply depots. Captain Rachel Stone led one of these teams through the underground tunnels that Tony Blake had discovered. Her soldiers moved silently through the darkness, using night vision equipment that the Cathari couldn't match. "Target ahead," whispered Sergeant Mike Chen. "Looks like a guard post." Rachel studied the alien soldiers through her scope. They were nervous, constantly looking at their scanners and checking their weapons. The Cathari knew humans were coming, but they didn't know from where. "Take them quietly," Rachel ordered. "We can't let them warn the others." Her team eliminated the guards without raising an alarm. The humans had studied Cathari anatomy for years, learning exactly where to strike, for quick silent kills. What had once been academic knowledge was now practical skill. They moved deeper into the mountain fortress following Tony Blake's intelligence reports. The tunnels were old and filled with dust, but they led directly toward the command center, where Zethak was hiding. Above ground, Colonel Parker's Marines were fighting through the outer defenses of Keth Dorai. The aliens had built their fortress to withstand siege weapons and orbital bombardment. They hadn't planned for human soldiers who could appear anywhere, strike without warning, and disappear into the shadows. "Echo Company, take the eastern wall," Steve ordered over his comm. "Fox Company, hit their artillery positions. Golf Company with me on the main gates." The battle for Keth Prime raged for 3 days. Human forces slowly closed the ring around Zethak's fortress, while the alien commander retreated deeper underground. Every hour brought new reports of human victories across the planet. On the third day, Tony Blake's team finally reached the command level of the fortress. They could hear voices speaking in the Cathari language, and their translators picked up words like escape and surrender. "He's close," Tony whispered to Rachel Stone over a secure channel. "Maybe 20 meters from your position." Rachel and her soldiers crept through a maintenance corridor that ran parallel to the main command room. Through a ventilation grate, they could see Cathari officers gathered around a large table. In the center stood High Commander Zethak himself. The alien leader was larger than the others, his black armor decorated with gold symbols of rank. This was the creature who had ordered Jake Morrison's torture and death. This was the monster who had thought humans were weak. "The human forces have broken through the northern defenses," one of Zethak's officers reported. "They'll reach this level within hours." Zethak struck the table with his armored fist. "How is this possible? They are just soft mammals. They should have surrendered when we showed them their dead pilot." "Perhaps we underestimated them, Commander," another officer suggested carefully. "Underestimated them?" Zethak's voice rose to a shriek. "They are animals, beasts without honor. They fight without following any civilized rules of war." Rachel listened to the alien's words and felt her anger grow. This creature thought humans were animals because they fought to win instead of fighting for glory. He couldn't understand that some things were more important than honor. "They're coming for me specifically," Zethak continued. "This isn't how proper warfare is conducted. Civilized species don't hunt individual commanders." "What should we do, sir?" asked Tesheva. Zethak was quiet for a long moment. Then he activated a communication device and sent a message on an open channel, one that every alien civilization in the galaxy would receive. "This is High Commander Zethak of the Cathari Empire, speaking to all intelligent species. Do not trust the humans. Do not make the mistake we made. We thought they were weak because they spoke of peace. We believed they were prey because they offered friendship." The alien leader's voice became desperate as he continued his broadcast. "They are not what they seem. Behind their diplomatic smiles hide the minds of apex predators. They let us believe we were superior while they studied our weaknesses. When we struck at them expecting easy victory, they revealed their true nature." Rachel could hear explosions getting closer as Colonel Parker's Marines fought their way through the fortress levels above. The final confrontation was only minutes away. "They are not fighting for territory or resources," Zethak's broadcast continued. "They are fighting for revenge. Cold, calculating revenge. They will not stop until every one of us is dead or captured. This is not honorable warfare. This is extermination." The transmission ended, and Zethak turned to his remaining officers. "Seal the blast doors. Activate all defensive systems. If we must die here, we die as warriors." But Rachel Stone had other plans. Earth wanted Zethak alive to face trial for his crimes. The alien commander who had thought humans were weak was about to learn just how wrong he had been. The blast doors of Zethak's command center exploded inward with a shower of sparks and twisted metal. Captain Rachel Stone stepped through the smoke, her weapon raised and ready. Behind her came 6 more human soldiers, their faces hidden behind combat masks. High Commander Zethak stood in the center of the room, surrounded by his remaining officers. The alien leader had drawn his ceremonial sword, its blade gleaming in the emergency lighting. His yellow eyes glowed with desperate fury as he faced the humans who had destroyed his empire. "So the beasts finally show themselves," Zethak hissed through his translator. "Come then, humans. Face me in honorable combat." Rachel lowered her weapon slightly but kept it aimed at the alien's chest. "High Commander Zethak, you are under arrest for war crimes against humanity. Surrender now and you will be treated according to Earth's military codes." Zethak's mandibles clicked in what might have been laughter. "Surrender? To animals? I am a warrior of the Cathari Empire. I demand the right to die in battle. You forfeited any rights when you murdered Lieutenant Commander Morrison," Rachel replied coldly. "When you tortured a prisoner and desecrated his body." The alien commander raised his sword higher. "The human died as a coward dies. We gave him the marks his weakness deserved. This is our way. Sergeant Mike Chen stepped forward, his finger tightening on his weapon's trigger. Captain, just give the word. We can end this right now. But Rachel held up her hand. She wanted Zethak to understand something before they took him. You think Jake Morrison was a coward? He attacked 3 warships and a single fighter to protect innocent people. He knew he would die, but he did it anyway. Madness, Zethak spat. No warrior fights without hope of victory. That's the difference between us, Rachel said. You fight for glory and honor. We fight for each other. Jake died trying to save his mother and the other people on that station. Your warriors die because they're afraid of looking weak. Colonel Steve Parker's voice crackled over Rachel's comm unit. Stone, we've secured the rest of the fortress. The planet is ours. What's your status? We have Zethak cornered, sir. He's refusing to surrender. Bring him back alive if possible. Earth wants him to face trial. Zethak heard the transmission and his eyes blazed with new fury. Trial? You would drag me before your courts like a common criminal? Yes, Rachel said simply. You're going to answer for what you did to Jake Morrison and all the other people you've killed. The alien commander looked around at his officers. Most of them had already dropped their weapons and were kneeling in surrender. Only Zethak remained standing, his sword trembling in his grip. I will not be paraded before human judges, he declared. I demand to die as a warrior dies with honor intact. Rachel studied the alien's face through her weapon's scope. She could see the fear behind his anger. Zethak wasn't afraid of death. He was afraid of being judged by the creatures he had thought were beneath him. You want to talk about honor? Rachel asked. Jake Morrison had honor. He died protecting others. You? You tortured a helpless prisoner and carved shame marks into his skin. You threw away honor the moment you decided humans were animals. One of the Cathari officers, the young aide named Tesheva, spoke up from where he knelt. Commander, perhaps we should listen to them. The war is over. Our empire is gone. Maybe it's time to— Silence, Zethak roared, turning his sword toward his own officer. I will not hear cowards talk in my presence. That was the moment Rachel had been waiting for. While Zethak was distracted, she fired her stun weapon. The energy bolt struck the alien commander in the chest, and he collapsed to the floor with a crash of armor on stone. Target down, Rachel reported. Zethak is alive and in custody. The capture of High Commander Zethak marked the end of organized Cathari resistance. Within days, the remaining alien forces across the Empire surrendered, or fled to neutral space. The proud warrior race had been broken by 3 weeks of human warfare. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood on the bridge of the ESS Thunder, watching as Cathari officials signed surrender documents. The war that had begun with Jake Morrison's death was finally over. Total human casualties? Kate asked her aide. 237 dead, 812 wounded, came the reply. Cathari losses are estimated at over 50,000 military personnel, plus civilian casualties were still counting. Kate nodded grimly. The numbers showed just how one-sided the war had been. Earth's military had performed far beyond anyone's expectations, including their own. 6 months later, Zethak stood trial on Earth in a courtroom filled with families of the war's victims. Helen Morrison sat in the front row, watching as the alien commander faced human justice. He had been stripped of his armor and military honors, forced to wear simple prison clothes. The prosecutor presented evidence of Zethak's crimes: the attack on Harmony Point, the torture and murder of Jake Morrison, the desecration of his body, and the threat to destroy human colonies. The alien commander listened to the charges through a translator, his yellow eyes dull and defeated. When asked to speak in his own defense, Zethak stood slowly. I do not recognize this court's authority over a warrior of the Cathari Empire, he said. But I will say this. We thought you were weak because you spoke of peace. We believed you were prey because you offered friendship. The courtroom fell silent as the alien continued. We were wrong. Behind your diplomatic words hid the minds of apex predators. You let us believe we were superior while you studied our weaknesses. When we struck at you, you revealed your true nature. Zethak looked directly at Helen Morrison. We killed your son thinking it would break your spirit. Instead, it awakened something terrible. You are not the peaceful species you pretend to be. You are hunters disguised as diplomats. The judge called for order as angry voices rose from the gallery. When quiet returned, Zethek delivered his final words. I do not ask for mercy because I know you have none. I destroyed your peace and you destroyed my empire. Perhaps that is justice. The trial ended with Zethek sentenced to life imprisonment. He would spend his remaining years in a human prison, a reminder of what happened to those who mistook Earth's love of peace for weakness. Helen Morrison was appointed as Earth's first military governor of the former Cathari territories. In her inaugural speech, she addressed not just the human colonists but the galaxy itself. My son Jake believed in peace among the stars, Helen said. He died defending that dream. The Cathari thought his death would frighten us into submission. Instead, it showed them the price of testing humanity's resolve. She paused, looking out at the crowd of humans and aliens who had gathered to hear her words. Let all species know this. Earth seeks friendship and trade with our neighbors. We prefer diplomacy to warfare, cooperation to conquest, but we will not be victims. We will not allow our people to be murdered and our dead to be dishonored. Helen's voice grew stronger as she continued. Send us your diplomats and we will negotiate in good faith. Send us your traitors and we will deal fairly. But if you send us your warriors, if you threaten our people or our way of life, you will learn why Earth needed only one reason for war. The speech was broadcast across the galaxy, translated into dozens of alien languages. Every species that heard it understood the message. Humanity was not to be underestimated again. In the years that followed, the Cathari territories were rebuilt under human administration. The warrior culture that had prized honor above all else was slowly replaced by something new. Former enemies learned to work together, building a society based on cooperation rather than conquest. And in a small cemetery on Earth, a simple headstone marked the grave of Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison. The inscription was brief. He died as he lived, protecting others. Visitors often left flowers there, remembering the young pilot whose death had changed the galaxy forever.